Welcome to the Rural Opportunities Podcast, where we talk about all things rural. This podcast is put on by the Camrose Regional Exhibition. We are an agriculture society and we are community builders. We have a long, rich history of rural, community, and agriculture involvement. CRE believes in the power of rural communities and that they are vital to the prosperity of our province and beyond. On this podcast, we talk about rural opportunities and challenges and have conversations with the movers and shakers of rural. Thank you for joining us. My name is Megan Lethbridge, and I am the host of this week's Rural Opportunities podcast. I am excited to interview our first guest, former Reeve at Camrose County, Don Gregorwich. Don has been an active leader in the community through municipal politics. He is a great community leader with a sweet tooth and a sense of humor. Don is one of my all-time favorite people. I am honored that Don agreed to share some of his story with us before retiring this week. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Megan. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us on our first ever Rural Opportunities podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here, although I'll admit to being a bit scared by all of this.
Well, it's our first one ever, so we're in good company. So you have been one of our rural leaders for the past while, and so we're honored that you are coming to share a bit of your story before you retire. How long were you the Reeve of Camrose County?
I was the Reeve for 12 years, from 2008, I guess, till 2007 till 2019.
Wow, that's awesome.
And previous to that, I was a county councillor for 3 years.
Okay. And how was the transition from a councillor to the Reeve?
It was demanding.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you go from a month where your timesheet might say you worked 4 or 5 days to 14 or 15.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And there was a lot of thinking that went with it that happened when you got home and you thought about things and so on, because you were exposed to so many more things than you are as a regular counselor.
Right. Mm-hmm. You're kind of getting things from all sides and everyone. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you've passed the torch to Cindy Troutman now.
Yes, I'm so happy about that. Cindy's our first female Reeve in Camrose County, and it looks like she's easily going to be one of the best Reeves we've ever had.
Yeah, she's doing a great job.
Terrifically capable lady.
Mm-hmm. So did you grow up around Camrose?
Yes, close by. I grew up on our family's farm out in the Kelsey district, so that's about 20 miles southeast of here.
Mm-hmm.
So our farm was a mixed farm, and you grew up as a farm kid, learning all the things you do on a farm, doing chores and watching the weather and living in a small rural community.
Yeah. So was there a school in Kelsey when you were younger?
I missed going to school in Kelsey by 1 year. There was a big reorganization of the school districts, and the year before I was to start school in the one-room schoolroom in Kelsey, they closed that school and moved us all to Balf.
Balf, okay.
So my schooling was in Balf. I happily took 13 years of schooling there because I failed grade 12 twice.
Okay.
So as far as my schooling went, Balf was a really good place to go to school, and it had all the good things about a rural community. You started off in grade 1 with a group of kids, and by the time you were done grade 12, most of them were still with you. It was a big family.
Yeah. I went to a rural school for grade 5 till grade 9, and that was amazing. Changed my life. Did you go on to school after grade 12?
Yes. My schooling is a bit of an adventure. As I mentioned, I couldn't pass grade 12. At that time, we had something called senior matriculation.
Okay.
And you had to get 60% in it, 60% average in your courses to receive senior matriculation and to be eligible to go to university.
Okay.
Well, at the end of my second year of grade 12, and I mostly went to school so I could play football in the fall and curl in the wintertime.
Yeah.
I left school and ended up going to work on for a construction company on a gravel crusher.
Okay.
And I worked there for a couple of years and decided that maybe there would be better jobs than working out in the gravel crusher when it was cold.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Lindsay Thurber Composite High School in Red Deer for my third year of grade 12, took a couple courses, chemistry 30 and physics 30, and really tried hard to pass them, failed them both. So I never did get my matriculation. But by that time I thought, well, I'd like to try something different. So I went to U of A one day and they had an open house week and walked around there, and I thought, this is a really neat place. Anyway, the U of A wouldn't admit me because I didn't have my 60%.
Okay.
But Camrose Lutheran College would.
Ah.
Camrose Lutheran College is now Augustana.
Okay.
But they said, we'll admit you because you're an adult student. I mean, I was old by that time, okay? So I enrolled, and they said, you have to get a 6.6 average or we'll boot you out.
Okay.
Anyway, I ended up the year with 7.5.
Nice.
And then the U of A accepted me.
Awesome.
And so 3 years later, I ended up with a Bachelor of Education degree,
Wow.
specialized in history and psychology.
Okay.
And so that's how my schooling went. And then I went on to teach in Grand Cache for a while.
Okay. And for a while, you had a hog farm, is that right?
Yes. Well, I was teaching in Grand Cache, and my wife was there as well. We had decided to build a house there and told that to my folks. Anyway, my dad showed up on the doorstep a couple of days later and he said, instead of doing that, why don't you come back to the farm and we'll expand the hog operation. And so we thought about it for about 10 minutes and said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. Didn't do any planning, Megan, no planning at all. And ended up coming back to the farm, and we developed a 100-sow fair to finish operation,
Okay.
which we became very successful at. My folks were there, obviously, and my wife and I. And we would produce between 1,500 and 1,700 animals a year.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed it, and we became quite good at it. Our farm won carcass quality awards for a number of years in a row.
Okay.
And so I didn't know much about hog farming when I started, but I sure learned fast.
Yeah, that's awesome. So are there awards from the province or locally?
At that time, the industry had its own awards based on the quality of the carcass that you produced. So they would take all of the animals you sold in a year, and each animal, of course, was given a certain standard. So, for example, they said the average hog is given 100, and the scale went up to 110. And so for years, we were in the 107 to 108 category.
Wow.
So we were in the top 20 producers in the province,
That's awesome.
which was quite amazing because when you consider we were pretty new
Yeah.
on that size of scale. So it was a good example of work from my folks and putting together nutrition and environment and genetics and just keeping an eye on things.
Yeah, that's incredible. How did you end up getting involved in municipal politics?
When I was in Grand Cache, I don't recall the exact decision day, but I was approached to run for town council.
Okay.
And so I did, and got elected to it. So I was on town council at the age of 27, and really enjoyed it. Well, when we moved back here, I was too busy just trying to survive to be interested in anything.
Yeah.
But then as the years went on, you're involved in the community and you begin to come in contact with county decisions and so on, and you just kind of get interested in it. And when the previous counselor left, he encouraged me to run for office, and so there were a few people that got behind me, and I got elected, and I've never been unelected since then.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. What was the funniest thing that happened to you while you were Reeve of Camrose County?
Actually, two things.
Okay.
One was being in one of the Big Valley Jamboree parades
Okay.
and riding a bull in the parade. It was a fellow by Wetaskiwin that had a tame 1,800-pound bull that he had trained to allow a rider. And we had a bit of a lottery here. Anyway, somehow I won the lottery, and the deal was you had to ride this bull down Main Street in the parade. So that was quite a thrill, and part of it got even funnier when, of course, there were all kinds of insults from people along the way and so on. But one lady, for some reason, had a tray of cinnamon buns, and when she saw me come along, she took one and she ran out and gave it to me, and she said, "You have to eat this as you're going along." So I did. So that was quite the event for me.
That's awesome.
And the other one actually happened in council chambers, and somebody, and we won't mention who, had taped one of those foghorns to the bottom of Trevor Miller's chair, and Trevor's one of our councillors. At that time, he worked for Cargill, and so he was pretty pressed for time. So if the meeting started at 9:30, he usually ran in about 30 seconds to 9:30.
Yeah.
So this was taped under his chair, and when he came running in, and that's how he was doing. He was running, and he came running along, and he jumped onto the chair and sat down, and the foghorn went off, and everybody broke up laughing, except him. So.
That's awesome. That would be a shock running into a meeting late. Yeah. I'm going to have to see if we can find a photo of you riding the bull for the Big Valley Jamboree Parade. I don't think I ever heard that story before. As someone who attends a lot of meetings, I bet there's a lot of coffee and snacks involved. What has been your favorite snack at a meeting?
Pastries.
Pastries.
And I've had a lifelong challenge with putting on weight, so I've had to learn to be very careful and not try to eat every piece of pastry in the room.
Yeah.
But easily pastries are my favorite.
Nice. Well, you can't go wrong with good pastries. What is the hardest thing about being involved in municipal politics?
That's a really good question. I've thought a lot about that, and I have a couple of responses to that. And one is not more important than the other, but dealing with misinformation, correcting rumors that get out there, communicating decisions, and the background behind those decisions to the average guy that you meet. It's so easy to start a rumor based on misinformation, and it can spread like wildfire, and all of a sudden you have people phoning you or getting a hold of you and saying, "You guys are going to do this, this, and this. What is wrong with you?" And when you explain the details to them, they say, "Oh, well, that's not what I heard at all. That makes sense." And probably the most common question that I've been asked has been the question, "Have you driven down my road lately?"
Yeah.
And you have to think on that for a minute, and it goes a little further than just the person wondering about when the grader is going to go down his road, because it kind of shows that too many of us are too locked up in our own little world, and we don't realize we're part of a bigger system. And so sometimes we really do need somehow to communicate to people that look at wherever you live in, for example, Camrose County. Yes, you're important, but there's an entire community around you that's asking the same question or has the same worries or the same ideas and so on. And we need to think a little further than our gate.
Right.
And so those two things have probably been the biggest challenges, I think.
And the county hasn't forgot about you. They just haven't got there yet.
Absolutely correct.
Do you think the misinformation has become worse with social media?
In a word, yes, because it can happen instantly.
Right.
Back in the day of newspaper being the media or radio, for example, there was that time lag for misinformation to develop. But now there's no time lag, and you can start misinformation and spread it around in a few seconds, and it can just spread like ripples on a pond.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, while social media is a terrific benefit to society, it does have a bit of a downside.
Yes, it does. Yeah, there are two sides to that coin. What is your favorite thing about living in a rural community?
Well, there's a couple of things that go into that. The good feeling you get from knowing you're part of a group of people who have the same challenges, who enjoy many of the same things as you do, who are willing to work together to create something. Who, when you drive down the road and somebody's coming towards you, you give the person a wave and they wave back. So I think maybe the word is togetherness. That there's kind of a common bond in a rural community. That doesn't mean you go to each other's house for drinks and dinner every other day, but you just know that there are people around you who are facing the same challenges you are, who see the same sunrise, and who, if an emergency happens, will come together.
Absolutely. Do you have a least favorite thing about living rural?
The least favorite thing is the lack of closeness to some of the things you'd like to do. For example, to go to theaters or sports events that are large sized, that the need to travel distances to get somewhere.
Yes.
And at the same time, I mean, let's face it, there are more services in an urban community than there are in rural communities. And so, while you'd like to go to a swimming pool, for example, if you have to drive 40 miles to go to a swimming pool, it's unlikely you're going to do it very often.
You got to plan your trips.
Absolutely. So, I guess distance becomes a factor. And maybe that's the thing you dislike the most.
Yeah.
You get accustomed to the gravel roads. I mean, some people go strange over having to drive on a gravel road, but you get accustomed to it and you deal with it, and that's life.
Yep. I love taking the gravel roads, actually. Sometimes I take the long way so I can take more gravel to my parents' house, which most people don't say.
Well, it gives you a chance to see the countryside.
Absolutely.
There's a whole wonderful world out there in the country.
It's beautiful. You don't see it all from the highway. I thought for sure for that question you were going to talk about skunks. Because I know you've had your battle with skunks.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, right now, I have 3 of them that show up to the cat's dinner table every morning.
Oh, my.
And as I'm right on the verge of leaving, there's no way I'm going to catch them. But the skunks and I, over time, have learned to deal with each other. I talk to them and politely suggest that they should go find another home.
Yeah.
but I won't miss those guys.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing rural communities?
Well, I've thought about that too, and what I jotted down was adapting to change demographically. For example, large farms, fewer young people, but at the same time, that is changing as our rural communities are beginning to be recognized as a place of opportunity, as a place for young families to move to leave city congestion.
Yeah.
But the challenge remains that as far as agriculture goes, large farms are going to continue. You can't reverse them. But at the same time, there's an opportunity emerging for small niche operations who can grow food, whether it be animal products or vegetables or horticultural products on a small scale, but it's a scale that can provide a definite income.
Yes.
So while there's this contradiction, while you have the land base changing dramatically, you also have another change that's beginning to emerge. And most of the time, the new farms are younger people, which are really important to a rural community.
I saw a survey a couple weeks ago that was talking about where people 25 to 35 would prefer to live, even if they were living in the city. 85% of us would prefer to live in the country. We're just not quite there yet.
That's interesting.
And I think Camrose County is a great example of that, with the food artisans of Camrose County and how they've supported the local producers, and it's a great opportunity for young families, like you say, and just anybody else looking to get into agriculture but might not be able to afford acres and acres.
The local food program that we have in the county started as a recognition by council that no matter the size of your operation, one producer is as important as another. That it doesn't matter whether you're the grain guy that has 5,000 acres of ground or the acreage owner who markets a dozen animals a year. You're still producers, and each of you are equally important, and so should be given the same amount of attention from our staff and from our budget and so on, if possible.
Yeah, Camrose County has been a huge leader in that. What do you see as some of the biggest rural opportunities, or for the future of rural?
I think to answer that, I think opportunity exists on a number of fronts. We just talked briefly about economics, but I believe there's opportunity economically, especially when you consider, and we talked a little bit about social media here a moment ago, but and that's dependent on having decent internet access out in the country, and it's coming. It's not where it should be at all. It's coming, but decent internet access allows people to not only keep in contact with their friends and so on, but to market products. And so there's an opportunity there. It allows people to commute without having to drive an hour every day to go to work and sit in an office.
Yeah.
And that's really valuable, and more that's going to happen. The communities offer, as I said before, that sense of bonding, and the chance for children and their parents to learn about nature.
Yeah.
Nature's in your front yard, and it's all of the things that come along with it, and that sometimes we take for granted Mother Nature, And, we don't look close at the sparrow, for example, and realize that it's a pretty neat little bird. We say it's just a sparrow. Well, look closer at it. But it gives people an opportunity to realize the world we live in is a pretty neat place.
Yeah, absolutely. Get more of a free-range childhood that way.
That's an excellent guess, because I recall as a little kid, I used to drive my mother nuts because I would just go wandering. And we had a drainage ditch close to our place, and I used to walk up and down that drainage ditch, and you saw everything in it. Well, she would never know where I was, and she'd think I had fallen in the drainage ditch and drowned and so on. So she'd be wild when I finally showed up at home.
Yeah.
But as you say, that was a free-range kid.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to do the same thing when I was little. We had a driveway that was 1/4 of a mile long, and it was wild raspberries down both sides. And so we'd wake up in the morning, me and my sister, and we'd say, "Hey, Mom, we're going to go get breakfast and go eat raspberries and go play for however long." And then she'd ring the dinner bell to get us to come back in for lunch, and then we'd go out again. It's a pretty good way to live.
Yes, it would have been. Absolutely.
What are some of the best things you have seen to keep youth engaged in the community and in agriculture?
One of the great things about youth in a community is the 4-H program, and especially good about 4-H is the fact that it is flexible.
Right.
For example, it's just not cattle or livestock. It's a number of things. For years, we had the first 4-H drama club in Alberta out in Kelsey.
Oh.
Now, Kelsey's a little place, population 12, a community hall and a post office and little else.
Yeah.
But that 4-H club operated for a number of years, and it gathered in kids from all around the county to come to it.
Wow.
And you take a look at the 4-H clubs that are in Rosen, for example, and they have a variety there. So 4-H offers opportunity to urban and rural kids. That's a benefit. I'm really happy to see how the ag colleges are spreading out more and more into the communities, and more of our young people are going to them.
Yeah.
Even if they don't accept the fact that, that's a poor way to put it, Megan. Just because you go to ag college doesn't mean you're going to come home and drive a tractor in a grain field.
Right.
The ag colleges are offering so many different opportunities for a good career in agriculture. And agriculture, it has to continue to explain to people that a career in agriculture is many, many things. It involves science, and it involves technology, and it involves a whole horizon of opportunities for people.
If you like finance, if you like marketing, you can do that in agriculture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that in every community there are adults who recognize that in order for our rural society to continue, our young people have to get exposed to different things and things like the internet and travel and so on. Encourage that.
Yeah. I know a lot of farms who, even if their kids are going to take over the farm eventually one day, they're still encouraging their kids to go to school somewhere, and they can learn something new and bring something back to the farm. And
I think it's especially valuable for any of us to grow, that we get out in the world and go to work for somebody and see different things and experience different places and travel and look around and experience life, and because all of those things help develop you as a person.
Yeah.
And you carry those skills with you forever.
Absolutely. If someone was thinking about moving to Camrose County, what would you tell them about it?
First off, I would say Camrose County is a land of opportunity. That's all there is to it. There's something here for everybody. I mean, obviously, the first thing people are going to say, well, can I get a job there? Well, you're not going to get the wide horizon of jobs that you will in an urban environment, but there are good quality jobs out in the county, and I'm going to put a plug in here for the county structure itself. If you take a look at the people who work in our county, there's an entire variety of skills that are necessary from engineering to technology to clerical to equipment operating. It just goes on and on. So I would say to people, investigate a rural community, look around and see what kind of businesses there are there, because there's a variety of businesses which all require talented people some way or another. So when I say it's a land of opportunity, I say it's economic, and it's also social as well.
Very much so. There's lots of arts and culture happening here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, lots of things to do. I would say, as a newbie to Camrose myself, I would agree with that. I didn't necessarily expect to be here as long as I have been here, and I really enjoy it. So,
well, we're really happy that you landed in Camrose and that we've managed to put some glue on your feet and keep you here.
yeah, it's a good place to be. You have been quite involved in the Roseland Ag Society. Why has being involved in a local ag society been important to you? The question's a bit incorrect in that I haven't been a really active member of the Ag Society like lots of people have. Been a member for a long time, go to community events and so on. And they have, one of the things about Roseland Ag is that they're far-sighted enough that they publish a newsletter every month, which people put items in about what's going on and so on. And so my big effort with the Ag Society has been to write a column every month, and I think we're closing in on 10 years of columns now. Wow.
And that's been a good experience.
Yeah, so they've been doing that newsletter for a long time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You have to give credit to the group for doing that, because obviously it costs money.
Yeah.
And yet they've committed to that, and their volunteers that are involved in physically putting it together have continued on over the years.
Yeah, a lot of time put into that.
Yes.
I do try, if I can think far-sighted enough, to put our stuff in there too, and it usually works out pretty well for us. What is your favorite CRE event that you've attended over the years?
That one's easy. It's the Bull Congress.
Bull Congress, yeah.
And the reason for that is that if you ever wanted to get a flavor of agriculture, go to the Bull Congress. And the things I've enjoyed have been meeting people over the years. You may only see them at the Bull Congress, but it seems you can take up where you left off talking with them last year. You get to see world-class animals and top-notch operators. And there's a number of people from Ireland that have come here over the years, and they've become friends. It's a social event. It's an absolutely wonderful event for any community member to go to. Doesn't matter if you raise cows or not, or if you live in downtown urban city.
Absolutely.
The Bull Congress is just a special event.
I would agree with you. It's a very social event. There's a lot of visiting that happens at that show that you don't see in a lot of other shows. And just even, I brought some of my friends out this year to see it, and they loved watching the cows, even though they're not necessarily cow people.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. There's an intangibility about the event that grows on you, and you walk away from it, and you just feel good that I was there. And you saw live animals, and you saw the efforts that went into looking after those animals. You saw the exhibitors from the industry that supports the beef people. It's just a first-class event.
Yeah, and the youth showing their bulls and their heifers for the next generation of cattlemen and cattlewomen.
Yes, excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a cool show. I think that's all the questions I had for you. So thank you so much for your leadership and commitment to this area in the last little while, and a long while, 12 years. And you will be missed, but I thoroughly hope that you enjoy every minute of your retirement.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of pictures and slides and so on that I'm finally going to get a chance to go through and sort out.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of sitting back and taking a look at the good things that have been done, and looking forward to doing stuff in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for asking me to be here. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
CRE and yourself is commended for being leaders.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Opportunities Podcast. Stay tuned next month for the release of our next episode.